What if the moment that finally shattered the silence was never meant to be seen at all? Because sometimes the most powerful truths do not arrive with announcements or confirmations, but slip quietly into the world through an unguarded second. And that is exactly how this story continues to unfold, late at night, behind a camera that was never supposed to preserve anything more than memory, far from microphones, far from official schedules, far from the polished narratives that usually define celebrity lives. When Song Weilong and Zhao Jinmai were captured in a moment so intimate, so natural, and so undeniably sincere that it felt less like a revelation and more like an interruption. An interruption of a private world that had been carefully protected until fate, coincidence, or perhaps exhaustion lowered their guard, because the power of that brief kiss was never in its boldness, but in its softness, in how unperformed it was, in how it carried no trace of urgency or hesitation. Just familiarity, trust, and a shared understanding that needed no words, and from the instant the blurry clip began circulating, fans sensed that this was different from every rumor before it, not because it confirmed what people wanted to believe, but because it felt like something that existed long before anyone was watching, something that had already settled into routine, into comfort, into quiet certainty, and the internet reacted the only way it knows how, by erupting, by dissecting, by replaying every second, by zooming in on expressions, body language, and pauses, because fans immediately recognized the location, the same filming set where the two had spent months immersed in a story that demanded emotional vulnerability. A drama praised not for spectacle but for restraint, for how it allowed feelings to breathe in silence, and yet what unfolded behind that camera had nothing to do with character arcs or scripted tension, because there were no staff calling action, no lights being adjusted, no audience waiting to be convinced, just a shared moment that happened the way real life does, unexpectedly, imperfectly, and without witnesses, until suddenly there were millions, and as hashtags climbed and discussions flooded timelines, excitement collided with disbelief, admiration clashed with concern, and one question echoed louder than all the rest: how long has this been real? Because the more fans looked back, the more the past began to rearrange itself into something unmistakable. The lingering glances that once felt like good acting now carrying the weight of recognition, the subtle shifts in posture when they stood near each other, the instinctive way Song Weilong would move just slightly closer whenever Zhao Jinmai seemed overwhelmed, the way she would soften visibly in his presence, smiling not for the camera but for him. Moments that had been brushed aside as coincidence or professionalism now forming a continuous thread that could no longer be ignored. And when fans replayed the clip frame by frame, slowing it down, analyzing every movement, one detail stood out with almost painful clarity. Neither of them reacted like people who had been caught doing something forbidden. There was no startled separation, no awkward humor, no visible panic, just calm acceptance, as if the camera had merely intruded on something ordinary to them, and that realization only deepened the intrigue, because if this was what happened when no one was supposed to be watching, what kind of moments filled the spaces no lens ever reached? What conversations unfolded during late-night walks back to their trailers? What quiet reassurances were exchanged during exhausting shoots? What shared silences became their refuge from the noise of fame? And to understand why this kiss felt so different from scandal or spectacle, fans began rewinding not only the clip but the entire timeline, back to their first on-screen appearance together. When viewers sensed something rare and difficult to define, a chemistry that did not rely on dramatic confessions or grand gestures, but lived in stillness, in the way they listened to each other, in the subtle emotional rhythm they shared, making their drama not just successful but deeply resonant, emotionally addictive in a way that lingered long after episodes ended, praised internationally for its authenticity, and yet what audiences never saw were the off-camera hours, when staff quietly observed how inseparable the two were, how they gravitated toward each other during breaks, shared meals without spectacle, rehearsed lines together long after others had left, sat side by side not out of obligation but habit, and Song Weilong, often described as reserved and distant, appeared visibly gentler around Zhao Jinmai, his expression softer, his movements more attentive, while Zhao Jinmai herself seemed lighter, laughing more easily, smiling more freely, carrying herself with a sense of ease that suggested trust. And even during interviews, when questions turned to their partnership, subtle cracks appeared in the carefully maintained composure, Zhao Jinmai hesitating just a fraction of a second too long before answering his name, a hint of color rising to her ears. While Song Weilong's glance toward her was not teasing or playful, but quietly protective, a look that lingered just long enough for fans to notice, because fans always do, yet still there were no confirmations, no denials, no attempts to shape the narrative, only silence, a silence that stretched until that single kiss disrupted the balance, because it carried something far more unsettling than scandal. It carried normalcy, comfort, and emotional familiarity. Not the recklessness of two co-stars crossing a line on impulse, but the quiet confidence of two people who had already crossed it long ago and simply forgotten to look over their shoulders, and suddenly the smallest details from the past snapped into focus. The matching accessories that appeared too often to be coincidence, the wrap-up photos uploaded within minutes of each other, as if shared time had extended beyond the set, the way Song Weilong adjusted Zhao Jinmai's coat when she thought no one was watching. A gesture so instinctive it barely registered in the moment, all of it hidden in plain sight, and as fans pieced together the timeline, one truth landed with unexpected force: they were never chasing attention, they were protecting something fragile. Something real, something that required privacy to survive, but privacy is a luxury rarely afforded to celebrities, and once the clip escaped into the public sphere, there was no reversing its impact. Because the reaction was not limited to excitement or curiosity, it was emotional chaos, the internet doing what it always does, demanding clarity, assigning blame, predicting outcomes, splitting fans into camps. One celebrating the authenticity of a love story that felt refreshingly genuine, the other worrying about backlash, industry consequences, and the cruelty of public opinion, especially given the relentless scrutiny Song Weilong has endured throughout his career and the immense expectations placed on Zhao Jinmai at such a young age. Questions flooded comment sections and forums alike. Will agencies step in? Will statements be issued? Will schedules change? Will this connection survive the unforgiving spotlight? Because history has shown how unkind the industry can be to relationships that grow quietly instead of strategically, and yet what made this moment stand apart was not what happened next, but what did not happen. No rushed clarifications, no carefully worded denials, no forced appearances designed to redirect attention, just silence, steady and unbroken, and sometimes silence communicates more clearly than any official response ever could, with industry insiders quietly suggesting that both actors were fully aware of the risks yet chose authenticity over control. Because that kiss was not careless or impulsive, it was human, a fleeting reminder that beneath contracts, expectations, and public personas are people who long for connection, for warmth, for love that does not require a script or an audience. And as fans began sharing messages asking others to protect them, to respect their privacy, to let them be happy, something rare happened. The fandom shifted from consumption to guardianship, turning curiosity into empathy, speculation into restraint, and perhaps that is why this moment resonates so deeply, not because it exposed a secret meant to shock, but because it revealed a truth that felt tender, grounded, and real, a truth that reminded everyone why stories like this endure, why audiences are drawn not just to fame but to humanity. And if you felt the weight of this moment, the emotion carried in silence, and the quiet beauty of something genuine unfolding without permission, thank you for staying with us until the very end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to 24H News TM for more breaking stories, hidden moments, and deeper looks behind the headlines. And now we invite you to join the conversation. Do you believe this was fate finally slipping through the cracks, or a private love story unintentionally pulled into the light? Share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below.